I get a lot of calls from folks who want me to help them get a job. I have a very good network. And so they're like, can you help me get a job? And I'm like, yeah, what do you want to do? And they're like, well, I'll do anything. I'll do it. I've got this background. I've got, this kind of thing. I'm like, no, I'm not going to help you get a job until you tell me specifically what you want. Like, what gives you energy? What would be the ideal job? Like, narrow it down.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets, the podcast where we talk with successful career coaches on how they built their success and the hard lessons they learned along the way. My name is Davis Nguyen, and I'm the founder of Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, and even $100,000 weeks. Before Purple Circle, I've grown several 7- and 8-figure career coaching businesses myself, and have been a consultant at 2 career coaching businesses that are doing over $100 million each. Whether you're an established coach or building your practice for the first time, you'll discover the secrets to elevating your coaching business.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets Podcast. I'm Pedro, and today I'm joined by Rob Craven, who works with founders who have climbed the ladder and grown their businesses, but still feel a gap or void, sometimes experiencing imposter syndrome, overwhelm, or burnout. What drew me to Rob's work is his recognition that success doesn't automatically eliminate the internal struggles that high-achieving leaders face, even when everything looks perfect from the outside. Rob specializes in self-leadership and transformation, helping move individuals, teams, and entire organizations from status quo to stratosphere through insights that address the fundamental disconnect between external achievement and internal fulfillment. His approach tackles the question of who helps the helpers, providing leaders with the tools to serve their teams from a place of authentic strength rather than hidden struggle. Welcome to the show, Rob.
Thank you, Pedro. That's one of the best introductions I've ever had. I appreciate that. I might have to record it and use it.
Well, Rob, you're the one to blame it. Okay. You built that. So there's that. So just a quick reminder. And, I'm kind of a comic book nerd. And when I see that part that you said, who helps the helpers, it throws me back to the 80s with the Watchmen comic book, which I love. There's a quote that says, like, who watches the Watchmen, right? It's like, who takes care of us, let's put it like that.
Love that.
Now, before we get into that, I want to know the origin story, and there it comes to the play, the comic book origin story, right?
Right.
Now, I'm curious how this all actually started with the coaching. What was going in your life when coaching became more than just an idea?
It's funny. Coaching means a lot to me. It's a loaded word because I think, even as far back as when I worked for Procter & Gamble or Boston Scientific, I spent time coaching others around me, whether it be mentoring other salespeople or even, mentoring other leaders in the organization. I went through a consulting phase, a pretty deep consulting phase before I became a CEO. So for the better part of a couple of decades, I spent time at the helm of 3 very high growth companies, purpose-driven high growth companies as CEO. So even in that role, I would say I played the role of coach, teacher, mentor. I'm a big believer that the leaders run the business, especially the second level down from the CEO. So I would say I've been a coach in that regard for a long, long time, 4 decades. I think the other more practical term around coach, 3.5 years full time. Before that, did some angel investing where I also played a coach role with the entrepreneurs. And then coaching in between, a good CEO gets fired. And so in between my CEO gigs, I also just gravitated towards coaching. Now I would say for the past 3.5, 4 years, I've been officially building a coaching consulting firm. And it's been fantastic. I'm learning a ton along the way.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, we were talking about that before recording for the podcast episode. Now, I want to know one thing, because there's an in and out, a foot in and a foot out, right? 17 years with Scale Passion. And then from the past 3.5 years, you really dialed in, right? Mm-hmm. So my question to you is, at what point did it stop feeling like a side thing or a calling, even the coaching side, and start feeling like an actual business you are responsible for, that you took the leap of faith, right? And now you're full gas on Scale Passion.
Yeah, I think if you ask my wife, she'd probably say, "Why don't you just stay in the CEO gig? It's a pretty good gig. You get benefits. It pays well." I was blessed to lead a couple of companies through exits and that kind of thing. I think I've always felt this calling towards purpose, and it's part of what I teach and part of what we do at Scale Passion. And so for me to take my own medicine and really dive deep into purpose was a big part of my transition from my last CEO gig, which ended at the end of 2018, into the Scale Passion world. And I feel like my purpose is to help more than one company. And now I kind of define that as founders or entrepreneurs to have the courage, clarity, and conviction to scale up something that's meaningful to them, that is in alignment with their purpose. So that started off with a couple of coaching gigs, and then I felt the call to write a book. So I wrote Scale Passion. It launched 2 Januaries ago, and have had some success with that. It's been a wonderful experience writing that book. And then I've been really blessed and fortunate to build a team around me here at Scale Passion that drops in to help these founders in deep ways. So the impetus was to do more with my purpose and to try to touch more than just the one company as CEO. Does that make sense, Pedro?
That makes a lot of sense. Okay. Now I want to dive into, I would say, like, especially in the early days. Okay. Because in the coaching space, we see a lot of coaches out there trying especially, like I said, in the early days, trying to help everyone, right? You're coming from a CEO background, so that plays a little bit different on your end. You have, like, it sounds like you can resonate more with the CEO, the C-suite, and the owners and the founders and all of that. But I want to hear from you. Once you were out there helping people, right? Who did you naturally ended up attracting? When did you realize, okay, this is my tribe?
Well, two out of the 3 successful CEO gigs that I ran were run by entrepreneurs. And I was able to get close to them and understand the founder challenges in a way that was very significant. Now, since then, I've coached over 200 entrepreneurs, and I go deep with probably about 20 a year, okay, in terms of our client engagements. And I saw their struggles. And I learned about this thing called the Adizes curve. It's a professor who mapped corporate life cycles. And he talks about courtship when the idea is born. And then there's you birth the baby, you go into infancy, that's the business. Then you go into go-go, where the founder makes all the decisions. That's typically, up to $5 or $10 million in sales. The founder is the person, and they attract people around them. And so that works really well when the company is smaller and there's a lot of employees. And then you hit what's called the adolescent transition, where what got the founder here won't get them to the next level. And so I was really blessed to build 3 businesses through the adolescent transition and understand that founder challenge. So when I get with a founder and I sit down with him or her and start asking questions, I can predict what they're going to say. I can be very Nostradamus-like. And so I'm able to get trust with them very quickly because I understand their pain. I see where they are. And I've spent, decades trying all the different approaches to solving this, and have tried to simplify it down to some core principles that I can then help them to navigate the transition. And that means several different things I won't go into unless you want to go there. But the goal is I understand my market in a deep, deep way. And I know that's probably a simplistic way to think about it for your coaches that are listening. But there was a great book I read a long time ago called Book Yourself Solid. And it talks about the red velvet rope, only allowing people past that rope that brings you energy, that you connect with immediately, that sees who you are and understands that you are for them. And so I've done my best to stick to that principle and so the founders I work with now are those that are stuck. They're stuck either in what got me here won't get me there. Their revenue might be stuck, or it might be the founder that's stuck from the standpoint of the company's outgrowing them. I mean, it's just massive revenue, or they brought in investors that, they need to learn how to deal with an investor or a board. And so they're in that transition and they're stuck. And, my team and I are able to go in and really help shake that loose and give them systems personally and corporately to help them scale through that.
Okay. I'm going to think out loud here for a second, because I see a lot of coaches there. They are kind of afraid to niche down, right? They're like, oh, I'm going to leave a lot on the table and all of that. And when you told me what you just did, right, it sounds like that when you speak their language and you position yourself in such a niche, it's so much easier to connect with people. Do you think that's a powerful way to see the niche, or do you see it in a different way? Like, it's just the way you framed it. It sounds like positioning, right? And it's a great way to connect with people.
Yeah. I was at a networking event today, And, oh, what do you do, Rob? And I'm like, well, I work with founders where the company has outgrown the founder. And a lot of times they're pulling their hair out and they're freaked out. And, and I'm describing what I do. And I talked to one person, they're like, oh, you need to meet so-and-so immediately. Versus the counter to that is, oh, I consult or I coach executives. Okay. Well, what kind of executives and what problems do they have and what need is it? I would liken this to another story I like to tell, which is I get a lot of calls from folks who want me to help them get a job. I have a very good network. And so they're like, can you help me get a job? And I'm like, yeah, what do you want to do? And they're like, well, I'll do anything. I'll do it. I've got this background. I've got, this kind of thing. I'm like, no, I'm not going to help you get a job until you tell me specifically what you want. Like, what gives you energy? What would be the ideal job? Like, narrow it down. Is it a big company? Is it a little company? Is it a startup? Is it what role is it? Are you managing people? Are you more strategic? And so I see it all the time where people try to broaden out to try to hit as many targets as they can. In actuality, you're just confusing people. I'm saying this from a spiritual standpoint, but there's a quote in the Bible that's all about lukewarm water gets spit out. Be cold, be hot. You know what I mean? Like, make a point. Don't try to be lukewarm. And I also get a lot of passion for what I do. And I get a lot of passion for the people I do it with. And so if you can tap into that passion and really identify who that is that you do that thing for, now you're coming with some energy. So when I was at this networking event this morning, I'm talking about all the founders and they're like, well, I know this founder that's excellent. And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly right. And we're connecting on something that's more energetic and more passion, more energy. And so I would like to think that's more memorable too.
It's like they don't have to do any, push-ups to translate what you're telling them. It's
Correct.
like obvious. It's
Yes.
like, oh, I know Jack, I know Joe. He definitely needs that, right?
Yep.
It's like it makes so much easier.
Yeah.
Now, I want to do a quick exercise, right? Let's pretend I'm your ICP. I'm your ideal client profile that we just discussed.
Very familiar.
Right?
Yep.
So I love that. Now, how would I be able to find you in the first place, right? Marketing wise.
Yeah. Most of the clients that are coming to us right now are coming through word of mouth. We do incredible work with our clients and they're willing to give us their quotes. They're willing to call people for us. They're willing to pick up the phone and say, you need this guy. So a lot of folks, your coaches that might be listening, if they do have a niche that they're playing around with, that niche is highly likely to know others in that niche. Does that make sense? So for me, it's that founder that's stressed out or burned out or kind of at the end of their rope. They are probably in some circles with other founders that are stressed out at the end of their rope. They're in those network groups. So for me, that's like YPO. If you've ever heard of Young Presidents Organization or EO, I do a lot of workshops for them. It's a target-rich environment. Second generation, third generation businesses, hired gun CEOs, founders, entrepreneurs in that room. So when I get in a room like that and I provide value for the whole room, at least 2 or 3 people are raising their hand saying, hey, how can you help me here? Like, I need some help. If they're the target market in the room, it's huge. I also do some speaking. I wrote a book called Scale Passion. I talk a lot about how to keep purpose and energy in your business. So speaking, I'll be honest, speaking is great. I love it. I get a lot of energy from it. It doesn't produce a ton of leads unless I'm in the right room. If I'm in a room full of CEOs, it produces lots and lots of leads. So for me, knowing my niche, knowing my target client, knowing my ICP makes it very easy for me to find where they hang out. And so that's really the marketing from that standpoint. I don't cast a wide net yet. I do have aspirations to build my business. And right now our target is $8 to $30 million companies. Long-term, I'd like to add $1 to $10 million companies and do more one to many type works, and so that's second phase for me right now. It's really 1-to-1. My team comes in and we really help a company in a tight way. But I want to scale my business. And so, that I have a vision around what scaling my business looks like and what that means to the world. And so we're oriented around that as well.
It's interesting. You brought up something, right? You mentioned that the ICP, your avatar, they eventually know people who are sharing the same pain or sharing the same stuff because eventually they hang out, right? They have a common interest. It's only fair that they eventually will hang out into the same spots. Yep. So that makes a lot of sense. I love that. Now, let me do the second exercise, which is I'm still your ICP. I'm still your avatar. Okay, Rob. Now, let's pretend I'm being onboarded, right? I eventually went through the sales process. Let's call it like that. I got to a word of mouth referral, whatever. You may have different offers. I understand that, right? But there's alignment. Let's say there's alignment and it's in the main offer. Okay. Now I'm being onboarded. So walk me through the process of working with your business and what are the potential outcomes I can expect out of it.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're in the process of switching to a new approach, which I'm excited about, which is more of an application approach. So instead of, hey, buy what we're selling, it's apply to work with us. And we're excited about that because what we do is very specialized and we do it for a very specific type of entrepreneur who's in a very specific position. And so if an entrepreneur isn't a good match, there are other places we can point them to add value. But let's just say, like you said, they are a good match and they're coming on. So the first thing we do is a Kim call, and then we do what's called a first step. And our first step is a paid engagement with a lot of diligence. And then I call it a dinner and a day. We do dinner to talk about vision and personal goals and aspirations. And then we do a day to talk about strategy. And the goal then is to provide value. We want to give them some value based on our model, but also weigh out if this is a good connection point or not. Our offering is not inexpensive. At a lower end offering for us is $5,000 a month. Our typical offering is $30,000 to $40,000 a month. And so being able to connect in that way with the first step is a wonderful onboarding tool because it just makes sure that we're gonna work well together. It's a good fit. It's kind of a marriage. And so we kind of see our offerings now as not, hey, here's what we've got. Do you want to buy it? But, do you want to apply to work with us? We've got limited capacity. And so we want to make sure that we're doing the things that structure this in the right way so that you feel comfortable with the value you're getting from us. Does that answer the question you were going for?
Yes, it does. And one thing that really caught up my attention here is the in-person event, right? I feel, and I'm not sure you're right there with me, but I feel like, and especially in this day and age with AI and all of that, sometimes I get a text or a message or an email and I'm like, okay, is this a bot? This is my first filter right now. Yep. So I'm feeling almost like the in-person events, and we have a retreat coming up for Purple Circle in about 5 days. The in-person events are making their second turn, I would point like that. Do you feel like the same thing?
100%. And I'm involved in some communities that are very exclusive and invite only with CEOs. And it's a wonderful place to learn, first and foremost, and make those connections. And then to become known in a circle where people can mention your name and say, so I always ask my clients and I want us to be known as best in the world at something. So if for Scale Passion, it's about, we want to be best in the world at facilitating a founder through this transition to something that scales their impact to, 10x, 8x, 6x, like big impact. And so we want to be best in the world at that. And so when someone mentions my name or somebody on my team's name or Scale Passion in particular, I want them to know what we're best in the world at. So being in those communities where that word can trickle, especially if you're doing some work for somebody in that community and they're blown away by the value. Now you're building more of an ethos. You know what I mean? You're building a soul to your company that's more than just the person. And the other thing, if we go deeper here, Pedro, like I'm trying to build a movement. So, we call it capitalism 3.0. I write a lot about bringing, the right brain back into business, emotion, purpose, impact. The left brain is pretty easy. We got that covered. Capitalism 2.0 is all about the left brain, risk, making money, profit, which is all very important, but we've lost the right brain. And so I'm calling that capitalism 3.0. And so part of what we're trying to do as a company as well is build a movement, not just sell stuff. And so we get a lot of energy and excitement from trying to build that movement.
Okay. Now I want to shift gears here real quick and I want to throw you a curveball. Okay. Here it comes. Because here's the thing, right? You were in the CEO chair for a while. You had this big, enormous machine in the back end running for you, multiple teams. You have marketing team, you have sales and all of that, right? And then you shifted to really shifted 3.5 years ago to coaching. And this is your own business, your own baby, right? And I do understand you have a team behind that helps you. But at the same time, very passion driven. It's in the name, right? Scale passion. So how do you think about managing your time and energy. So the business doesn't start owning you, for example, because in the coaching space, like we just established, very passion driven. And then sometimes I see coaches out there, they're burning themselves out because it doesn't even look like work, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you set the boundaries?
Great question. And I think this is one that not just coaches, but everyone could learn from. I'm a big believer in multiple sources of personal energy and being very conscious of your personal energy and where it comes from. Most people are not conscious of it. It's unconscious. Sometimes I have energy, sometimes I don't. Okay. And so what we do first with the founders we work with, and what I do and what my team does, is we call it a personal flight plan, but it's basically, what are my sources of energy? And I would submit, and this might sound woo woo, but we've got a lot of proof behind it with hundreds of founders. I would submit that purpose is the deepest and most powerful source of energy. If you can actually articulate why you exist, why you're on this planet, it's the deepest source of energy. Okay. Sometimes that's easy for people. Sometimes it takes some work. We've got workbooks around it, all that. So, but if you can identify what that is, and then another source of energy is how you spend your time. Like, we do energy audits. Like, go back through your last 2 months of meetings. Where did your energy go up? Where did your energy go down? And what did you learn from that? Okay. So it's an energy audit. So purpose, energy audit, and then daily energy drivers. For me, a daily energy driver is working out, meditation. I want to date my wife a certain amount, a month, those kinds of things. So where do I get energy personally daily? And so making the unconscious conscious, and then orienting your life and your team to keep you as much in your energy as you possibly can. I happen to be at around 85, 90% in my energy. And I've hired people around me that do those things where my energy goes down. Okay. Expenses, calendaring, email, detail work, legal, blah, blah, blah. So even if you're a solopreneur coach, you could pick up an EA now for a few $100 a month that can probably take 30% of the things that bring your energy down off your plate. Do it. Make the investment. When you're in your energy 50%, 60%, 70%, and you're focused on getting there, when you meet somebody that's in your ideal client profile, your ICP, that energy shows up. You're not tired. You're not full. And so you pay for these things quickly. You pay for these outsource people very quickly. So make the investment in yourself if you're serious about it. If you're serious and you want to build something that's meaningful and you want to work with people that are meaningful and you want to do something meaningful, then make the investment, figure out how to do it, but do it thoughtfully, analyze and figure out where your energy comes from, make it conscious, and then make the investments to stay in your energy.
I really like that. It's like you're going to show up a better version of yourself because your energy level is going to be higher than, instead of just thinking, oh, I need to invoice this guy. I need to, do this X, Y, and Z admin task. So that makes sense. Now,
or push, or, you get a lot of founders or coaches that are pushing for their business. Right. And so when you're pushing, things tend to push back. When you're in your energy, you're in flow, it flows. It's like you're just flowing and the revenue comes. You're not trying to push for the revenue. You're not trying to push for that impact. And so I see a lot of founders who push hard. I see a lot of coaches who push hard, you know what I mean? And they make it bad that they don't have the gig. And so when it's bad, they get desperate. And have you ever wanted to buy from a desperate car salesman? No, you don't want to be around that energy. And so the energy management is huge versus pushing for something. Would be, what I would submit to your listeners.
And there's also that test, right? When you have a client that is, you're looking at the calendar and you're like, oh my God, this guy again.
Exactly.
Right?
You got to fire that guy. You got to fire that person. Like, it's a great exercise, Pedro. Go through your clients and just do an up arrow or a down arrow. And I'm not going to allow you to do if it's a question, it's a down arrow. Okay. And so if it's not we call it a whole body yes, head, heart, gut. If it's not a whole body, I love working with this client, do the down arrow. And then, like a lot of books I've read have mentioned, and it's not my prescription, but I ascribe to it. It's then fire those clients, let them know it's not a good fit. Yeah. I could tell you some stories about that, but it's like,
you can give me one top of the head.
Well, just a quick story about the red velvet rope. I was at a networking event several years ago with Scale Passion, and I said, the guy said, well, what do you do? And at the time I was using a line that was, I'm the guy change the world founders call when they're ready to scale their impact. And he goes, well, what's a change the world founder? And I go, well, why'd you start your business? And he said, well, I wanted a big house and a boat. I didn't want to have to worry about anything. I want to give generational wealth to my kids. And I said, well, there's nothing wrong with that, but I don't work with founders like you. And he was shocked. And I go, yeah, I don't bring my energy to a founder that's motivated by those things. And he goes, well, isn't that what we're supposed to be motivated by? And I go, no, I know lots of founders who are motivated to have real impact in the world. And I asked him, I said, if you were to use your business to drive real impact in the world, might that look like? And he went on a tangent of what he really loves in the world and how he gives his money to a nonprofit. And it just so happened that nonprofit connected to his business very beautifully. And I said, so if you want to hire somebody to help you bring that energy you have for that nonprofit into your business, that's doable. In fact, I think your business will grow faster and you'll be more fulfilled at work. And so by sticking to my niche, by sticking to the red velvet rope, by sticking to that and saying, I won't do business with you, I became infinitely more interesting to that person. You know what I mean? But it wasn't a trick. I'm being authentic. I'm being very authentic. You're not trying to trick anybody here. But when you stay in that energy, and he asked, well, what does that mean? Now you see my passion coming out. Like, oh, this is what it means. I get to give you lots of examples about that. You see what I mean? So it's that connection to the energy that will help you drive your business. The goal isn't the revenue. The goal is to stay in the energy. If you're in that energy, the revenue will flow. It'll come.
You remind me of a story. I think it was Jay Leno. He's a big fan, a big car fan, something like that. And his guy, like, he was telling this guy who was trying to buy a Ferrari, right? But he had to buy like 10 beat up Ferraris, not the model he wanted, So they kind of BS'd him for a while. And then he had the McLaren guys, the Mercedes and all of that. And it was like, they're so much better. And the reason for it is like, he was trying to buy it, right? And the salesperson asked him, hey, are you going to ride this on the street or you're going to race with it? And he's like, no, just on the street. So the guy immediately tells him, so you don't need X, Y, and Z in this car. And that immediately builds trust. Right. It's basically what you just told me. It's just like, you give a step back. I'm not needy, right? I don't need this. I do it for purpose. Does 100%. That make sense?
Yeah. As soon as you get connected to the revenue or connected to the sale or personally invested in making that sale or losing that sale, I would submit you're not connected to your purpose. You're not connected to your energy. In fact, money, I used to have a very good dear friend and entrepreneur that I worked with on my second gig who used to say, money has energy. It has energy. And so where you get that money and how you get that money brings energy. And so if you're getting it by scrapping and doing things you don't like to do, and it's not making you happy, then that money is bringing that kind of energy. If you're getting money from clients who are connected to you and they're your ideal client profile and it brings you energy and you are in your sweet spot, that money has energy. But to me, money is the result. Money is the result, not the goal. Why am I doing this? If it's to make money, I would say you're missing it because there's 18 million ways to make money. What I would say is it's about fulfillment in some way. And fulfillment, doing good in the world, is a wonderful way to be fulfilled. And so, yeah.
Yeah, that really hits home for me. Like the time in my life I worried the most about money was when I made the less, and the opposite is so true. Whenever I don't care about money and I'm just purpose driven doing something that I really feel like I'm challenged and I really feel like I can help people. Right. That's when really money flows, because you're not connected to the outcome. You're just in the flow. You're just moving and people can connect with that. They pick it up, right? It's like you don't care. You're just going in your own lane. Does that make sense?
Yes. And the visual I use all the time is put your two hands together, fingertip to fingertip, and push. And so when you're pushing for something, the natural tendency is your other hand to push back. Like anything you want to push for, it pushes back until you get your lessons, until you get your learning. So the first step is personal leadership. The first step is understanding where you get your energy and positioning yourself to do that. And so the founders I work with, for example, get totally burned out because they're trying to do the same thing they did to get the business to where it is. And they've got 40 or 50 people where it doesn't work anymore like it did with 4 or 5 people. And so they keep pushing for how they did it before. And so part of what we teach them is how to let go of that, how to find a new energy source, how to learn, how to get a growth mindset. Then we start working on the strategy of building your business. So if you were talking to me about how to build a coaching business, if you were a coach that I was mentoring right now, just one-on-one, I'd say, Pedro, how are you doing? Like, what's got you upset? What's your purpose? Why are you doing this? Where do you get energy? Where is it up? Where is it down? I would start there, not with our approach to business flight planning. What's the purpose of the business? Who's your ideal client profile? All those key questions. OKRs, we use OKRs on the business side. I always start with the person that does the personal work, then do the business scaling work. It's stage 1, stage 2, I call it. And stage 3 is radiate purpose. It's like, now we're going to do big things in the world.
That's awesome. You're getting me to a rabbit hole here, right?
Good.
So that's my fault, actually, not yours. But I'm thinking, right? I have 2 boys, 2 kids. And there's this thing that we want to keep it up, right? The justice. Oh, I want to treat them the same way. But in reality, just like comparing to the founders you mentioned, they're trying to replicate something, but they're a different person right now. And the market changed. So they cannot replicate the circumstances. Correct. They can try to adapt of the kind of a same framework, but it's a different landscape right now. So that's what I'm thinking, right? Sometimes it's like between my 2 kids, I'm not the same dad I was 3 years ago. I'm a different guy now. So I cannot replicate for my 3-year-old what my 7-year-old been through. Yep. It's a different situation. Does that make sense?
100%. We use a tool called Enneagram. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but all of our clients go through the profile, and it's a quick and dirty way for us to get to know our client in a deep way. It's very accurate in my experience, but also for the client the founder in particular, to start to understand that they are not the same as the people around them. So we tend to project on our hopes, dreams, aspirations, who we are on other people. And so understanding that your 2 boys are 2 completely different souls. Ultimately, they're going to, like, I've got 2 daughters. One's 21, one's almost 25. And they went in 2 completely different paths, right? 2 completely different personalities. And so as a founder, as a leader, as a dad, as an entrepreneur myself, how I show up has a lot to do with who's across the table from me. But I can't seek to understand who they are in a deep way and help manage and lead them until I understand who I am. What am I good at? Because the last thing I want to do is try to teach my kids gap accounting. I am not good at gap accounting. I am not a gap accountant guy, right? I'm good at passion. I'm good at vision. I'm good at discernment and galvanizing and all these other things. But if my daughters don't need me to teach them that, then how can I connect them with somebody who can teach them what they need to hear versus trying to be all things to all people, which is what a founder has to do at the beginning of a business. But as the business grows, you can start to specialize and bring the energy back and hire people around you that are good at those other things.
Right. You nailed it. Yeah, you nailed it. No, that's exactly it. Okay. Now, looking forward a bit, right? Let's talk about future a little bit. What's the direction you're aiming, scale passion towards? Are you thinking more about growth, leverage, building a team, or refining what already works? What feels most exciting right now?
Right. Well, we exist to try to support capitalism 3.0. And so the reason I started the company was to create as many converts in the movement of founders to this concept that you could do good with your business and scale it, like by X's, not by percentages. In fact, I think it's easier to scale when you connect in your purpose more fully and commit to it and attract a tribe around you that wants to support that. So our vision is to do that with as many founders as we possibly can. And so we've got some phases around that in our vision. Phase 1 right now is just kind of nail our model and do it in a way that we can provide as much value as we can for 15 to 20 clients a year, which is what my small little SWAT team, Navy SEAL team can do, where we drop into a client. But along the way, we're building the SOPs, we're building the systems, we're tapping into AI, we're using AI to kind of make it easier for us to do what we do. And then phase 2 would be to start training leaders. Most of the people on our team, the vast majority are ex-CEOs or ex-COOs. They're operators. They've been there and done that. So they've got the experience. So there are a lot of operators that cash out but don't want to retire, or they're tired of running a business. They want to do something more fun. And so being able to attract those people would be phase 2. How do we train you to come in and do this system and give them the tools that they need to scale up from there? The ultimate vision is to touch as many of those clients as possible. I happen to think founders are the best bet in this sweet spot where they usually get burned out. If we can help them build businesses that can touch more employees, can touch, kind of touch communities in a deeper way. But smaller founders are next on the phase list. And then the third phase is really corporate. And the pitch to corporate is how to act more like an entrepreneur, while being fulfilled, bringing fulfillment into business and making sure you don't lose the next generation of employees because they hate working where you are. So that's way down the path. And then for me personally, politics, some way to get government involved in capitalism 3.0 is a part of my long-term vision, long term. So that's kind of where we're headed. And the challenge right now is how to get me out of the business. I mean, like all founders, you're in the business, and I teach founders how to get on the business. So I'm working my own model right now. We're just a little early, and I've got to be in it,
Yeah, it looks like a challenge because you have a lot of energy just by listening to you, right? And then there's someone who's like probably going to listen to this podcast and they're like, hey, how can I talk to Rob, right? So the handoff from Rob to team, it's always tricky from a founder point of view, right? So that challenge, I understand where you're coming from. Now, you've been around long enough to see trends come and go, right, Rob? So people give business advice nonstop, especially online. Sure. Now, what would you say is like something that you hear repeated a lot that you think people misunderstand or overvalue?
It's so funny. We didn't have this conversation before, but I've got a Substack. I'll promote it if you want. Rob Craven, Skill Passion Substack. But I'm on myth number 8 of 10 business myths. Okay. So I've actually written 8 of these business myths that people say that I don't agree with. One is like culture takes care of itself, right? Like, those are, or another one that I just wrote about is, just hire the best people and let them do what they do. There's a lot of different myths. And so I hear a lot of them. I think the one that comes to mind for me right now that I think is worth mentioning. If you want something done, you got to do it yourself. Now, it's an interesting one for founders because founders have a tough time extending trust. When you start a business, you tend to hire people around you that you already know and that you can trust and that buy into who you are. And so you trust them because you've known them for 20 years. It's my cousin, it's my wife, it's my, it's my friend, and they just want to be part of it. And you can also tell them what to do easier. They're closer. As that starts to build, you have to hire people that are smarter than you if you want to do it right. Like in marketing or in sales, they go deeper, not wider. And so, that whole concept of doing it yourself is probably the hardest thing to learn as a founder is I don't have to do it myself. As I grow, I can build a team around me that can do it for me. Benjamin Hardy wrote about, and it's not him, it's the 2X is greater than 2X. 10X is easier than 2X guy. I forget his name. It's not coming to me right now. But he talks about who, not how, kind of transitioning from the who to not how to do it, but who's going to get to do it. Who am I going to get to do it? It's a big transition for people. So anyway, if you want to go deeper on my business myths, there's a whole Substack on it.
Dan Sullivan, the who, not
Dan
how,
Sullivan,
right?
yes. Thank you for that. Yeah.
I'm in the middle of that. I'm really super connector, but that one is the next on the list. Okay. I really like that. Yeah, great book, I think, but I'm going to read it. Now, I really love one thing that you mentioned, right? Because when I see founders, and especially in the coaching space, right? But that's all over industries. It's like when they're thinking about delegating, they have this scarcity mindset that there's trouble there, right? They're going to lose something. They're not connecting to an abundancy mindset that this person eventually will bring up something new to the table. Yes. That's a little bit of a shift considering the same situation. Like this is a new person, right? So is this a good or a bad thing? Do you see founders finding themselves in that same pickle?
100%. I mean, I hear founders all the time say, why can't they just get it? Why can't they just do it? Why? I hear it all the time. Why do I have to step in? Why do I have to fix this? Why can't they just understand it and do it? And I'm like, have you taught them how to do it? Well, they should know. And I'm like, well, how should they know? And so most founders are there's another part of my book that I talk a lot about, which is pace. Founders tend to outpace the room. They tend to be the smartest person in the room and they're outpacing the room, primarily because they know the strategy. It's their company. They can do whatever they want. They've got the strategy in their head. So they can go really, really fast. So part of the trick here is to slow down and teach. Slow down. And we use a lot of tools. We use a tool called a green sheet. We got a blue sheet, a pink sheet, a green sheet. But the green sheet's all about delegation. And it's a 1-page sheet that we teach the employee to use with the founder. So the employee pulls out a green sheet and starts asking questions. It's basically a form on that delegation. You're asking me to do this thing. And the founders need to slow down. It only takes 5 minutes or 10 minutes. It doesn't take a long time. But now if I'm asking somebody to do a PowerPoint for me and I'm the founder, Well, how many slides? And is it going to be read or is it going to be presented? If it's going to be presented, I want less words, you know what I mean? Or I want more words if it's going to be read. And so you get to ask the question so that now that person can deliver for you. You've actually taken the time to tell them what you want, which 9 times out of 10, they're like, hey, Pedro, can you do this thing? Yes, I can. And then Pedro thinks it's due on Tuesday. I think it's due tomorrow. And we don't have a clear agreement and we're not really clear. And so now everybody's frustrated. And so slowing down to make clean agreements, to use these tools. Our blue sheet is a proposal. Like if you want to make a proposal to the founder, if you want to make a proposal to the leadership team, you're a leader on the company, we teach you how to make a proposal and then you come and make the proposal, you know? So a lot of it is pace. A lot of it gets back to pace where things are just happening too fast for a founder and people can't keep up. And so it creates a lot of frustration. And so that slowing down is part of what we teach to people. And if you've got, if you've got coaches that are watching this that have got a team, even an external team, like an external set of, marketing firm, social media, or whatever, or even an external CFO, like a fractional CFO or something like that. The same thing applies. Teaching them what your strategy is, teaching them what your business is, teaching them what your vision is, teaching them what's important to you. What are your core values? Like, responsiveness is really important to us. So as the leader in the business, it's your responsibility to do that, not their responsibility to read your mind.
Isn't it wild? Like this keeps coming back to me, my kids, right? Because it's like the way we raise them sometimes. It's like I'm giving them answers, like to keep up the pace because I know the game plan, like you mentioned. I know we gotta leave in 15 minutes. I don't have like all the time in the world to explain it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm doing for them. But then I'm complaining, like the founder you mentioned.
Yes.
He creates the perfect scenario for people to rely on them, and complains about the fact that people rely on them.
We're many of us on my team are trained in a concept called conscious leadership. So there's a great book called The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. It's a wonderful book, and I've been trained on it deeply. And the first commitment of conscious leadership, and they're in order, 1 through 15, they're pretty much in order. But the first commitment is 100% responsibility. So it's what's my role in this? What's my responsibility in this? What did I do right or do wrong? Like that's the first question we ask. And a lot of times that gets back to, am I being curious or am I being right? Like if you're being right, you're not going to get very far. If you could be curious, that's different, right? So 100% responsibility is something that I try to teach the founders very quickly. They are a lot of times, it's called below the line in conscious leadership, where they're feeling at the effect of. And so we describe that as to me. The world is happening to me. And so the key thing when the world is happening to you is that there are no solutions below the line. There are no solutions when it's coming to you. The second stage is above the line, which is by me. Like we go from to me to by me. And so we teach people to take 100% responsibility for that employee who's not getting it, for the bad hire you made, for the, whatever it might be, for the client who just left. How do I take responsibility for that? And how do I get curious about it versus being blaming and taking it to a whole nother level? But that's a whole different tangent in terms of bringing consciousness into work. It's kind of that right brain stuff I was talking about before.
Right. Okay. Now, before we close this out,
Sure.
if someone resonated with what you share and wants to follow your work, okay, where should they go? And we're going to have all the links in the description, just the main thing they should go to.
Sure. Scalepassion.com is easy. Scalepassion.com, and also Rob Craven, Scale Passion at Substack. I do a lot of writing there. I've got a lot of content in another area. I'm trying to move over to Substack slowly, but those are the two links I would say. I'm also active on LinkedIn, not as much on Instagram right now. But scalepassion.com can kind of get you to those different areas.
Okay. From this chat alone, I feel like the need to highlight certain parts of our conversation, right?
Yeah, please.
That really stood out to me. I would say, well, 4 words really, they were highlighted during this entire conversation. I would say purpose. I would say passion and calling, right? So those 3 first, I feel like that's very important, like a fundamentally something that is key for you to move forward in your business. It sounds like I might be off, right? I really love the dinner and a day in-person event, right? But there's the 4th word that shows up there that you mentioned, which is value, right? So you want to deliver value during that first upfront. We want to deliver value to our clients. I really think That's very important in today's age, right? And the energy audit, also really cool. You're looking at your calendar, coaches out there, whoever's listening, it's like, it's a flag, right? So pay attention to it.
Yep.
Really like that. And last but not least, the capitalism 3.0, right? To build a movement. I really like that. I like an ecosystem, a movement, a way of doing things that goes back to alignment and purpose, to what you really, really want to achieve, you know?
Right.
So, Rob, this is my long-winded way of saying I appreciate you taking the time and being open.
Great recap. Thank you, Pedro. Yeah.
Great having you on, man.
Appreciate the opportunity. Thanks so much.
That's it for this episode of Career Coaching Secrets. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this episode to catch future episodes. This podcast was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, or even $100,000 weeks, all without burning out and making sure that you're making the impact and having the life that you want. To learn more about our community and how we can help you, visit joinpurplecircle.com.